My name is Paul Begala. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a former White House official, former congressional staffer, political strategist, TV talking head. Before I was any of those things, though, I was a gun owner, and I still am. Like 1 in every 3 Americans, I own a gun. And actually, I own over 20 guns. All of them are for hunting. Not a single one is an assault rifle. I am a hunter, not a killer. Each one is kept under lock and key, and all the ammunition is in a separate room, also under lock and key. It's just common sense. It is a family tradition in my family. My great-grandfather taught my grandpa how to shoot. My grandpa taught my dad. In fact, the only time I can remember my grandpa losing his temper, I was a little kid. We were at his farm, and there was a guy there waving around a gun, playing around with it like he thought it was funny. My grandfather stormed over to him, wrenched that shotgun out of his hand, and kicked him off the property. Made an impression on me. It's just common sense. So I, in turn, to play video games where they shoot people. No first-person shooter games allowed in my house to this day. Why? Because from earliest childhood, I wanted to teach my boys both respect for guns and respect for life. So you don't point a gun, even a toy, at a person, ever. Not in my presence. Responsible gun owners know, they know better than most people, the awesome, fearsome, deadly, destructive power of a bullet. We know that once you pull that trigger, there is no force on earth that can pull it back. So you have to respect that power. You don't play games with it. So this 5-generation family tradition of which I am a part of responsible gun owners actually puts us squarely in the mainstream of Americans. And I strongly support common sense gun reforms. That too puts me in the mainstream of Americans and in the mainstream of American gun owners. According to an Ipsos poll that I looked up, 77% of gun owners support red flag laws. You heard Richard Small from Charlotte, Texas, talking about this, about the responsibility we have, those of us who own weapons, to make sure that our kids are safe. That's why 77% of gun owners support red flag laws. Because it doesn't make any sense to give a gun to someone who a judge has decided is a risk to himself or to others. 72% of my fellow gun owners support raising the weapon to 21. In fact, 60% support raising the minimum age for all weapons to 21. Again, common sense. If we as a society don't think you're mature enough to handle a 6-pack of light beer, you are dang sure not mature enough to handle a weapon. 84% of gun owners, 84% of my fellow gun owners are not members of the NRA. Let me repeat that for the members of Congress and Senate who are listening. 84% of your constituents who own weapons are not in the NRA. So I think it's just brilliant that gun safety advocates, especially my old pal Alan Casey, John Bridgeland, who organized this People's Filibuster, I think it's so smart to include the voices of people like Richard Small, of gun owners, responsible gun owners, to play a part in this. I'm sure you saw my fellow Texan, Uvalde native Matthew McConaughey at the White House. He said this, and I'm quoting Matthew: "Responsible gun owners are fed up with the Second Amendment being abused and hijacked by some deranged individuals." Amen, Matthew. You see, that's what responsible gun owners really think, and he was speaking for us in a way that the NRA never will. You know, I had the honor of being an advisor to President Bill Clinton when Republicans and Democrats came together in this Capitol to pass common sense gun laws. But it was almost 30 years ago. The Brady Law was first among them. And according to the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, that law, in the 30 years since, has stopped over 3 million illegal gun sales. 3 million. So, of course, but now, 30 years later, we need to improve it. We need to expand it. We need to strengthen it. We need to modernize it. It's just common sense. Good God, we've got to close the Charleston loophole. Right? We know what that is. That was the loophole by which a white supremacist was able to buy a gun before the background check cleared. Congressman Jim Clyburn, South Carolina, tells us that since 1998, the Charleston loophole alone, that one loophole, has put guns in the hands of over 75,000 people who should have been legally stopped from buying one. One of those 75,000 walked into Mother Emanuel Church, slaughtered 9 people during Bible study. This is madness. We've also got to close the boyfriend loophole, the hate crime loophole. It's just common sense. Now, responsible gun owners, we know this. As a hunter, I can tell you, you don't need 30 rounds to drop a deer. I have hunted for decades. And I can count on one hand the number of times I've even gotten a third shot off. See, if you're not a hunter, let me give you a little clue as to what happens in the field. When you shoot, that prey either falls or flees. He don't stand around for 30 more rounds. So a 30-round magazine clip is useless to a hunter. It is only useful to a mass murderer. As for assault weapons, you've heard so many people in this People's Filibuster describe them as weapons of war, and for good reason. The NRA is lying to you, my fellow gun owners, when they say the changes in an AR are only cosmetic. They are presuming you don't know about guns, but we do. Responsible gun owners know that the reason that an AR-15 and those other assault rifles are weapons of war is because they're designed to be. They have a short barrel. Okay, a short barrel diminishes accuracy over distance. You can't use one to drop an elk that's 500 yards away in Montana. You can't do it. That short barrel makes only close-range shooting possible. They also have things like pistol grips. They have these barrel shrouds because the barrel gets hot because they're shooting so many bullets. Those features are useless in the field. They are designed for what tacticians call spray firing, which is a tactic designed by the military to kill a lot of people in a short amount of time. It'd be a total failure in the field, but it is designed to take as many human lives in as brief a period of time as possible. So when the gun lobby says assault weapons are the same as my hunting shotgun, they are lying, and responsible gun owners know this. Ronald Reagan knew it. So did Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, who, by the way, is a lifelong South Georgia quail hunter. They supported President Clinton's background check and the assault weapon ban. Republicans and Democrats coming together for common sense. It happened once. It can happen again. Now, none of these measures violate the Second Amendment. That's nonsense. The Bill of Rights, Justice Jackson once wrote, is not a suicide pact. Justice Antonin Scalia, no liberal he, an avid hunter himself and a defender of the Second Amendment, wrote in the Heller decision, which our friends in the NRA cite all the time, but they don't actually read it, and they don't want you to, because here's what Scalia actually said in that opinion. Laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms, as well as limits on carrying guns in sensitive places, they are consistent with the Second Amendment. He also approved of prohibiting what he called dangerous and unusual weapons, and he also spoke highly of prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill. That's Antonin Scalia. Don't let him fool you. Professor Brian Garner of SMU Law School, who's a distinguished research professor at SMU, the editor-in-chief of Black's Law Dictionary, co-authored a book with Justice Scalia. Here's what Professor Garner recently said. He suggested we should read the Second Amendment as extending, and these are Professor Garner's words, not mine, only to technologies of the caliber that existed when it took effect. Muskets that required 8 seconds to reload after each shot. The Second Amendment, Professor Garner wrote, has nothing to do with assault rifles. It's just common sense. And yet, sadly, when it comes to gun safety, common sense is not too common. Not in this building. Not in my beloved state of Texas either. Did you know that in Texas, where I grew up, you are required to take 1,000 hours of training before you can be a cosmetologist? 1,000 hours. That's 8 hours a day, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, for more than 6 months before you can curl, cut, and comb hair. Well, hell, that makes sense. That curling iron's hot. It could hurt somebody. But if you want to buy a gun, you know how much training is required? 0. Zip. Nada. Nothing. That's madness. It makes no sense. Most states, I think every state, I've been licensed to hunt in any number of states, and every one of them requires hunter safety courses. I know Texas does. We hunters, we know about gun safety. We don't want someone out in the field with a loaded gun who doesn't know about gun safety. We insist on that. But if you want to buy a gun and walk into a shopping mall, in a grocery store in Buffalo, in a Walmart in El Paso, in a synagogue in Pittsburgh, in a church in Texas or in South Carolina, in a school in Uvalde, no training necessary. Responsible gun owners, they think that's crazy. Now look, we know we'll never end all violence. Heck, Cain slew Abel with a rock. But he didn't mow down dozens of people with a weapon of war in a blink of an eye. So we can do more. We can do better. We must do better. We gotta do better. Look, some of the fondest memories of my life were hunting with my late grandfather and my late father. When I'm gone, I hope my sons look back with equal fondness at those mystical, magical moments, watching the sunrise out of a deer blind. I get that culture. I am of that culture. I am from that culture. But those memories are only possible when we gun owners are responsible. We believe in safety. We believe in security. And we're not going to fall for the lies that somehow taking weapons of war out of the streets will restrict our rights in the field in any way. Or that stopping domestic abusers or felons or people on the terrorist watch list from buying weapons somehow impacts the overwhelming majority of us who live in peace and obey the law. Because it won't. That's why it's so vital for this movement to do what you're doing. Reach out to gun owners. Respect their values. Find that common ground. You will find more of it than you can possibly imagine. Believe me, no gun owner wants to be around anybody who's not qualified on their weapon. No hunter wants to be in the field with someone who's not safe. So reaching out to them is so vitally important. And here's like how the politics of this work. People always ask me, why does this always poll so well and then we lose in elections? 30 years ago, one of my clients, mentors, heroes, friends, Harris Wofford, the senator from Pennsylvania, the second largest membership of the NRA, but he voted for President Clinton's assault weapon ban. He voted for the Brady bill. And so we did a poll. Overwhelmingly, Pennsylvanians thought that was a good deal. They thought that was a wise vote. They supported Senator Wofford doing that. But in the same poll, our brilliant strategist, Mike Donilon, now working in the White House for all of us, for President Biden, Mike Donilon added another question. When I hear politicians talk about gun control, I worry they don't share my values. That too spiked. You see, it's all caught up together, and we have to help our fellow Americans and our brothers and sisters who own weapons like I do to unpack that, to understand that safety and security are completely consonant. They're the same as the culture that we grew up in. So yeah, we're here, frankly, to pressure and to persuade the politicians. That is only right and just. That is our right. It is our duty as citizens. But at a deeper level, Shakespeare was right. The fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars, it lies in ourselves. It lies especially in me and every gun owner. See, we need to tell our elected officials that we're not going to fall for the scare tactics and the fear-mongering anymore. We need to tell our elected officials that some overfed, overpaid NRA lobbyist in an Italian suit does not speak for the men and women who wear camo. We need to tell them that protecting our kids, protecting our cops, protecting our churches, protecting our schools, protecting our grocery stores. That's entirely consistent with the Second Amendment. And we need to fortify them so that when they vote for the common sense gun safety that we demand, we'll have their back.